What's going on, guys? It's Austin Putnam with FlickDirect talking to the lovely Mariama Diallo on her first film, as I recall, first film?
Yes, my first feature-length film.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That leads into my first question. So from what I looked up on your IMDb, you've primarily done shorts before this whole thing. So what was like taking that big leap, because I can imagine how terrifying it is to go from 10, 12-minute shorts to making an hour-and-a-half feature. So talk about the process. Was it easier? Was it harder? And when did you come away from it all?
Yeah, so it was definitely daunting to make the leap from shorts to feature length. Interestingly enough, actually, I kind of had to learn how to write a short after writing features. Writing features came more naturally to me. But in terms of directing, the thing that was really intimidating to me at the outset was, I had done a few shorts and they'd be 3-day shoots, and by the end I felt exhausted, and like I couldn't go on. So when I was looking ahead to this much longer shoot, I didn't even know how I would be able to survive it. But you get on set the first day I got there and it just takes you, and you're just going off of adrenaline and momentum, so.
I would say, so what did you take away from making your first film altogether?
That I want to make more.
That's a terrific answer for that one. So one thing I want to ask is this. So I went into this film completely blind. I didn't know anything about it, which I recommend you do. Go into it completely blind.
Yeah.
And I heard witch trials. And I am obsessed with the Salem witch trials to no end. So there have been IP out there, whether it's TV or film, that have told stories, whether they're inspired by them or relate to them. And this is a completely different take on that period in historical fiction. Not fiction, but nonfiction. So what encouraged you to tell this story that related to the witch trials?
So the witch element of the story was, it was an early element, but even before that, I was thinking about the character of Gail Bishop, and I was thinking about, the space of Ancaster. I knew that I wanted to follow Gail as she ascends to this new position, and I knew that I wanted to set it at a school in the Northeast. And I just started thinking about emotionally the feeling of being in the Northeast in one of these sort of New England colleges where, you're heading gradually towards winter and darkness, and what that feeling is like. And what it brought up for me as well was this imagining of, these early American winters where you have this, the Puritan cultures, and then inevitably the Salem outcropping of it, and just this sense of bewilderment and loneliness and isolation in the woods. It all felt very emotionally true to what the characters were going through.
So speaking of characters, there is a really, really good cast in this film. Starting with Regina Hall, who's primarily known for her comedy. She does dabble in the psychological thrillers here and there. Zoe is terrific in this movie. And you also have Ella Hunt, massive fan of Band of the Apocalypse. So talk about getting those specific actors, and also mention, how did you find Zoe? Because she is a star in the making from this movie.
Thank you so much, and yes, I agree, Zoe is incredible. So we found Zoe through an audition process. Zoe sent in a tape, and she nailed it in the tape. And we had been seeing a lot of people who were also amazing actors. We had been seeing them in person, because this was pre-pandemic, so when that was still possible.
Oh, God,
yeah. But even just on a tape, Zoe blew us away more than anybody who we saw in person. So she flew out to New York to meet with us, and I had since seen her film Gin that she starred in, that played at South by Southwest the same year that I was there with one of my short films, so I was aware of her. And we just immediately hit it off, and I could tell that she brought this vibrance to the character that felt very important and difficult to manufacture. And I agree, I feel so grateful for the ensemble working on the film. It's really, really a blessing to have been able to work with all of them, and a true credit to our casting director, Jessica Daniels. But yeah, I mean, everybody from, obviously Regina, Zoe, Amber, Ella, Noah. There's so many incredible actors. We have two Talias, both of whom knock it out the park. We just really were working with some amazing people.
So one thing I want to ask is this. So whenever it comes to watching a new horror film, a thriller or horror film, I always do a deep dive into seeing what happens on set. So given how this is a film that takes place within certain time periods or relates to them, was there anything particularly that happened on set that happened to freak you guys out or scare you guys at all?
I mean, the thing that really scared me was the location for Belleville House. That is a now abandoned college in upstate New York. Pace Briarcliff was its most recent iteration, but when it was built, it was called Mrs. Dow's School for Girls. And when we got there, I mean, it's like they just left. There was still the portrait of Mrs. Dow in the stairwell, and she's kind of like looking out, really freaky. So that was a very scary experience. It was also, as you can imagine, since it was abandoned, we brought in our own electricity, but it wasn't really heated. Everything was like cold and dark, except for in the parts where we were shooting.
Oh my God. Now, speaking of the cinematography, this is a beautifully shot film. And there are specific parts where the colors are very vibrant uses of blue and red. Can you talk about the visual influences of the film?
Yeah, so Charlotte Hornsby and I are great friends. Charlotte is the DP of the film. And so for months leading up to the shoot, we watched a lot of films and kind of talked about the color palette and what felt meaningful to us. I think that, you know, The Shining certainly is a classic horror film that found its way, not only, you know, kind of stylistically, but also, you know, in terms of the color in the film. And then there were a lot of things like Let the Right One In, the original version, that I think that ultimately our color palette is not very influenced by it, but it's a film that we had so much admiration for. And so it was just part of our conversation about how to create the mood of Ancaster and how to best represent, you know, the world that the characters were living in.
How much the film changed, like in terms of runtime? Like, is the film that we see, did that change at all? Like, just a couple of frames being trimmed from your assembly or from your rough cut?
So our assembly was 3 hours long.
Oh my gosh.
And the finished film is, you know, a little bit more than an hour and a half. So yes, there was a lot. There was a lot that that went, and beyond, you know, just kind of trying to distill scenes and trim them down. There are certain storylines even that didn't make it into the finished film.
Well, I gotta say, in terms of the editing standpoint, that was such a refined cut that it moved at such a great flow. And trust me, I believe that the assembly cuts, they're the worst to deal with. Now, the last thing I want to ask you is this. So you do a lot of tightrope walking. You balance social commentary, historical horror, supernatural horror. Before I leave you today, can you talk about the more than impressive, I gotta say, can you talk about the blend of how you introduce the commentary aspect with the witch trials along with the supernatural horror element that you have in you this way?
Yeah, so thank you so much, first of all. I think that was definitely a balancing act, and it's something that, you know, that took a lot of work in the script stage. But for me, they're very complementary in a sense, because I think that as the characters' waking life worlds get more tense and more oppressive, these supernatural occurrences begin to bubble up to the fore that much more. So I think that there's an emotional truth to particularly Jasmine, Gail as well, to all of their experiences of the supernatural that is inextricable from their daily experiences in the academia and the horror of, you know, everyday life.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. The film was great. I cannot wait to see it again. You have a great voice. I want to see more from you. I want to see more from Zoe. Guys, go see Master. Great flick.